the sudden death of her parents in a mysterious car accident. 13-year-old Elara was sent to live with her only known relative, her father's estranged sister, Aunt Maura. The woman had not seen Elara since she was an infant and had always resented her brother for the life he had made, for the inheritance he had gained, and for the legacy he carried from their lineage. The girl arrived in the remote village of Garthmere with nothing but a suitcase of clothes and the small, worn-out locket her mother had fastened around her neck moments before the crash. Maura greeted her without warmth, her thin lips curving only into a shallow smile that did not reach her eyes. Her house was old and creaked with secrets, just like the woman who lived in it. Elara was put to work the moment she arrived, tending to the chickens, scrubbing the floors, and chopping wood that was too heavy for her small frame. Maura took none of the stipend that had been offered by the state for Elara's care, because there was none. She'd cleverly forged documents to show Elara as her dependent, so she could legally claim the girl. But her interest wasn't maternal. It was purely transactional. In the village, Maura had a reputation not just for her meanness, but for her dealings in shadowy affairs. She often took in stray children or hired desperate workers, only for them to disappear after a few weeks, their existence reduced to rumor. No one spoke against her because no one had proof, and those who questioned too loudly often met with misfortunes of their own. Elara, still numb from grief, didn't know how to resist. She bore the cruelty with silent endurance, her bright green eyes watching, learning, unknown to Maura, and indeed to anyone in Garthmere. Elara was no ordinary girl. She had been born under the blood moon, the rare celestial event that only occurred once every 100 years. Her birth had been marked by omens, her cries echoing in unnatural harmonies that made the air shimmer. Her parents had been the keepers of an ancient secret, part of a hidden bloodline descended from the guardians of Elara, a realm lost to most of the world's memory. They had lived quietly, guarding a sealed gateway hidden deep in the forests beyond the village, disguised as scholars and historians. Elara was to be trained, but her parents' death had halted the process before it even began. All that remained of their legacy was the locket, containing a key to her awakening. Maura, however, had a plan. She had recently made contact with a recluse named Old Thomlin, a man shunned by the village who lived in a stone cottage nestled at the edge of the swamplands. Rumors whispered that Thomlin practiced ancient rites and trafficked in forbidden pacts. Maura didn't care. She saw an opportunity. Thomlin had offered gold, a large sum, for a young and obedient servant. Maura saw her chance to get rid of Elara and make a profit. One evening, without warning, she shoved Elara into the back of a rickety cart, told her they were going to the market, and drove her to the edge of the swamp. When the girl protested, Maura slapped her, her face twisted with disdain. "You've cost me enough," she spat. "Time to earn your keep." She left Elara with Thomlin, took her payment, and vanished into the mist before dawn. Thomlin, stooped and cloaked in patchwork robes, watched the girl with an unreadable expression. His cottage was filled with ancient tomes, glass vials, and flickering lanterns that gave off an eerie green glow. He did not speak to her for days, only gave her food and left her to sleep on a straw mat in the corner. Elara remained quiet, observing everything. She noticed the symbols etched into the walls, the way the shadows moved strangely, how the air felt thick as if infused with magic. She began having dreams, visions, really. Her mother's voice whispered in her ear, guiding her, reminding her of who she was. Her fingers itched with power she didn't understand. One night, the locket around her neck began to glow faintly. She opened it and found not just a picture of her parents, but a tiny rune carved into a piece of stone that shimmered with energy. As she traced it with her finger, memories unlocked, memories not of her own life, but of her bloodline. She saw the guardians of Elara, saw the great tree that anchored worlds, saw the portal her family had protected for generations. The knowledge flooded her mind and stirred something sleeping within her. Thomlin noticed the change. "You're not like the others," he murmured one evening as he watched her from across the room. "There's something ancient in your eyes." He began to test her, asking questions in dead languages, placing relics before her to see which she would touch. Elara, though cautious, answered truthfully. She was not afraid. She sensed that he was not what Maura had painted him to be. Thomlin was dangerous, yes, but not evil in truth. Thomlin had once been a guardian himself. He had lost his way after a great betrayal, exiling himself to the swamp and living under the guilt of failure. He recognized the signs in Elara, the locket, her bloodline, the awakening. He began to teach her, slowly at first, then in earnest. He told her of the worlds beyond, the threat of the Veilborn, who had once tried to pierce the gateway her family protected, and the prophecy of the blood moon child who would restore balance. Meanwhile, back in Garthmere, Maura's fortune began to sour. The gold she had received seemed cursed, her animals fell ill, her crops withered, and shadows clung to her walls at night. She tried to seek help, but the villagers began to avoid her entirely. In desperation, she returned to the swamp, intent on retrieving Elara and demanding the curse be lifted. But the girl she had left behind was gone. In her place stood a young warrior, eyes aglow with power, symbols etched in light upon her skin. Elara confronted her aunt with calm intensity, speaking in the ancient tongue of their ancestors. The ground trembled beneath her feet. Thomlin stood beside her, no longer hunched, his full strength returned by the presence of the air. Maura screamed and tried to flee, but Elara raised her hand. She did not seek revenge, only justice. With a word, she severed the dark ties that had long bound Maura to the forbidden arts. The woman collapsed, unconscious, her mind purged of the greed and hatred that had consumed her. She would live, but she would never harm another child Elara returned to the forest with Thomlin, to the hidden gateway her parents once guarded. There, she took up the mantle meant for her, opening the path between realms just enough to allow light and balance to flow. Her presence restored the power of the guardians, who had been scattered and diminished. The village of Garthmere began to heal in ways it did not understand. The air grew lighter, crops flourished, and peace settled like a warm blanket over the land. Thomlin remained at Elara's side, not as a master, but as a mentor and friend. And Elara, no longer the orphaned girl in rags, no longer the servant of a cruel aunt, stood at the threshold of two worlds, guardian of the gate, bearer of a legacy stronger than any curse or coin. Her identity, once hidden even from herself, had become her strength, and from the ashes of betrayal and sorrow, she rose into the truth of her destiny.